Hi, everyone.
Hi, friends.
This is so exciting. We have Storm Shultz with us tonight. We're interviewing author of Meant to Be, the sweet romantic comedy. Storm, we're so happy you're here with us.
Me too. I can't believe I finally get to talk to y'all. This is really exciting.
Yeah,
Yay!
it's
Well,
so fun to finally talk to people that we've been interacting with on Instagram for so long, and it's just such a treat to finally talk to you face to face.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, we have some fun facts for those who are watching about Storm. Storm is a first generation German American on her mom's side, and she's fluent in German. That's very neat.
say something
She
like hello or
The hello's not a very hard one. It's just
yeah.
hello.
Um, just say like a phrase that you'd like to say.
Okay. Ich bin sehr hungrig. Ich brauche ein bisschen Kuchen zum Essen. So I'm very hungry. I need some cake to eat.
say
Oh my gosh. Say no more.
Relatable, right?
Amazing. Okay, sorry to
Well,
put you on the spot.
that's a great segue into the next fun fact. You love to bake and you love the science of baking and making your own recipes.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
fun. So, third fun fact, you wrote your first story at 12 years old and it was all in text message format.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love that so much. And then last but not least, Storm is a third degree black belt in Taekwondo, and she was the state champion for sparring in 2005. That's so
So
cool.
very, very long time ago. I am definitely not as athletic now as I was back then. So
You're still amazing. Anyone who can speak a foreign language and like can do taekwondo, that's just amazing to me. So
That's so fun. The fun facts are some of my favorite parts of the interviews.
yeah,
We learned so many cool things about people.
so true.
Well, let's just jump right into the interview. We are so excited to be talking with you about your novella Meant to Be. It came out last summer, and so I think it's so cool to be interviewing you almost a year from when it first released, because I'm sure you have a lot more insight or things that you've learned since when you first published. So I'm really looking forward to your answers for these questions. So, first and foremost, what inspired you to become a writer?
Um, really just like realizing I had a talent for storytelling, I guess. Telling stories to my younger brothers when I was a kid and realizing that like the stories were believable even from, just making them up in my head. I didn't really realize that it helps to kind of plot out things until about 2, 3 years ago. So everything was very just like as soon as I thought of it, I would just spit it out. But it always kind of worked itself out. And so I just kind of realized like I might actually be good at this thing. And so it just I don't know. It was something that I was good at and it was something I enjoyed. And so I just kind of went with it, I guess.
That's great. Sometimes it's just it's as simple as that, and I think that that's beautiful. So it doesn't need to be overcomplicated.
Yeah. Really, really basic.
Great. So what inspired you to write Meant to Be?
Just I've always really liked like literature or stories that are kind of cozy and like don't have a lot at stake, I guess. And last summer, or beginning of last year, I was just starting to garden and I was just starting to plant flowers. And I was like, you know what I miss? Just reading books that were about kind of normal things. Like I grew up reading lots of fantasy and like the epic adventures, and I loved those. But sometimes it's like I also just want to enjoy, like I guess, regular life. Um, and so I was just kind of like, maybe I should just write something like that, I guess. Again, really, like nothing groundbreaking there. Like it's very simple. But yeah, kind of grew up on a farm, and my dad was a beekeeper, and so like just little things that I'd already kind of known that I knew could make a really simple whole life, but still bring, you know, comedy into it. And yep, just kind of snowballed from there.
I think you did a really good job in that. It's so charming and it's not, you say simple, and it is. It's a very simple storyline, simple plot, but it's not boring. It's very charming. And I think you captured the cozy English countryside super well.
Well, thank you.
Of
That's
course.
definitely the goal.
Yeah, you did
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I just echo all of Jordan's thoughts as well. I went back and reread my review and I was like, there was literally nothing I disliked.
My best, the favorite kind of reviews, right?
Yeah, it
Right.
was great. I mean, I wrote a little more than that, but I was like, wow, this is so sweet. Like, yeah, Jordan, you nailed it. I totally agree. Yeah, just really sweet and cozy.
Well, thank
Were
you.
there any particular writers who inspired your writing style?
Yes. So Sophie Kinsella, she's not a Christian author, and I grew up. I probably started reading her as a late teen, but she has a very like comedic way of writing, and she really likes. This is going to be kind of random, but she really likes parentheses. So like everything's in first person, and so like when the main character is thinking of something, a lot of times kind of in the middle of the narrative, there's just like parentheses of like a little side note, and then she keeps going. And I love, like, I don't know why, I love that. I love it so much that my editor kind of fussed at me and was like, just use em dashes. Why do you keep using parentheses? I'm like, I promise other authors use it. She made me actually find books with the parentheses to like send her pictures because she was like, nobody else does this. And I was like, no, really, they do. So I really enjoyed her and just kind of the format of how she writes her stories. And I really enjoy like Emma St. Clair's like lighthearted. Again, she's got, which hers are rom-coms, um, all of her books, but she kind of brings comedy into like pretty like normal. Like it's not like they're doing something extra crazy. It's like normal life, but with a lot of comedy. And so that's been really fun to read and try to kind of like have my own spin on it, you know. So yeah, those kinds of authors, I guess I really enjoy just kind of absorbing some of their techniques and then making them my own.
That's great. I don't think I've heard of any of those authors before, so it's neat to hear. I think like we ask this question a lot when we interview people, so it's always neat to hear what each author will say because it's different every time. And there's
Yeah.
some crossover, of course, but it's just neat to be like, wow, these are people I've never heard of before. So that's
Yeah.
also, is that your cat in the background?
Yes. See, that's what I'm saying. Like that she just wants to come and wail at us.
Oh,
So
hello. She's here
this
for
is Lady
Mama's
Gray.
interview.
Yeah. I tried to kick her outside, but we closed the doors, and so I don't really like to let her outside with the doors closed. So she had to
It's
come
just,
back
it's
inside.
meant to be that she's in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So cute.
Well, kind of segueing into that, what did your writing process for Meant to Be look like?
Lots of disjointed writing sessions. So I mean, y'all know I've got a 3-year-old, and I now my little one is gonna be 9 months in like a week or two. That sounds right. Yeah, she's 8 months old, I think. Um, I swear, time blends together. Like there was a section of time where I was like, "Are you 6 months old?" And she was already 7 months old. I like totally missed like her turning 7 months old. So I don't know anymore. She's a baby. But lots of writing during nap times or like when they're in bed. And if they get up, like especially from nap times, like I just kind of have to stop where I'm at and then kind of come back and pick up later, which has actually worked out in some ways because like there's sometimes where you come to a scene and I'm like, I know where I'm going, but I'm missing like just something to really get there. And if I'm forced to take a break, sometimes I can just kind of think about it for the next few hours until I get to write again, or even the next day until I get to write again. And then sometimes that actually works out that I can kind of have already figured it out before I sit back down again. So yeah, lots of writing during nap times and bedtime. So yeah.
I really admire that. I love that you, even in the midst of motherhood and raising two little girls, that you still take the time to steal away for yourself. And you ended up writing just a beautiful book that didn't feel disjointed at all. It was very
Oh,
well.
well, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree. It was very sweet.
So how did you decide on the setting for your book?
Growing up, all of my favorite books were written by British authors, and because they're written by British authors, they were set in Britain. So didn't matter. Like Harry Potter is one of my favorite series of like all time. Like even now, like as an adult, I like listen to the audiobooks like every year. So I'm on book 5
They're so
again
good.
for probably the like 8 doesn't time. Like I don't know. There was like a season back when I was, gosh, I don't know, like 10. I would check them out as audiobooks and listen to them while I was like cooking. And my mom like banned them from the kitchen one summer because she was so tired of listening to like Jim Dale. So a lot of my favorite authors and a lot of my favorite books were set in England. And while unfortunately, I don't live in England, I thought it would be really fun just to, and sort of nostalgic to write about something that like I spent a lot of my childhood like listening to audiobooks or reading books that were set in England, even if they were, maybe fantasies or if they were contemporary or historical even. So it was sort of nostalgic, and just a chance to write something that I really enjoy reading about.
Yeah, I think you did a great job. Similar to you, love your setting so much more than an American setting. I don't know why, it's just preferable to me. So I was thrilled when I was like, wow, it's a contemporary, but set in your yeah, in Europe. And I was like, this is amazing. So yeah, I was really excited. And plus like you had goats and bees, and I was like, there's nothing better than that. Um, so I had all the things. Um,
Yeah.
so speaking of that, I mean, maybe the goat was your favorite character to write, but who who or what was your favorite character to write? And along that same vein, it's a two-part question. Which one was the most difficult?
I actually think my favorite character to write was Malcolm, because like he's so unlikable, and he's supposed to be unlikable, right? But there was something, I don't know, it was almost fun to try to think of what he would be doing or saying, and to kind of just, not that not none of it is from his perspective, but still just the things that he says and does. Like it just was kind of dramatic in a non-dramatic way. So like, I'm not having to actually interact with the real Malcolm, but it's still kind of fun to write the drama of a Malcolm, you know? So he was a lot of fun to write, and to make kind of unlikable in us. Like he's not the worst person alive, but he's definitely like not a great guy. So it's a kind of a fine line to write between making him just horrible and also making him unlikable. But as far as like who was the hardest to write, I think that was Ronan. So he's the male main character, right? And he's the love interest, and you get a lot of his point of view. But he was, I mean, I'm not a man, and I'm not in love with a woman, so it was kind of hard to write a man falling in love with a woman and to not make him kind of flat. Like I had a beta reader early on that was like, he seems too perfect. Like he's got to have some kind of flaw. Like, what's wrong with him? Like and so I had to shape him a lot more than I did any of the other characters. So a lot of going to my husband and being like, okay, would a guy say this? Would a guy think this? Does this seem realistic? And so he was more challenging to write than pretty much all the other characters. And I think it's because I had it from his point of view. But I've learned a lot with him, which was really cool. Because like first draft Ronan, kind of boring. Like end draft Ronan, I feel like was like a really like normal but really decent guy. And so I think that was a great it was a great thing for me as a writer to like learn how to write him. But he was probably my more challenging character, just because like I wasn't used to writing, I guess, men from the first point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And what good feedback too from your beta readers saying there needs to be something wrong with him and going in and digging and okay, how can I make this man not perfect? I'm sure that was a difficult process.
Yeah, because I had one beta who was like, there's nothing wrong with him, like he needs to do something. And I had another beta who was like, he's not very nice to his brother. And I was like, well, there's a flaw. So I
There
had
you
to
go.
like, make him a little more well-rounded, but even when it came to his brother's relationship, I had to like tweak that a little bit because I didn't want him to come across as like not a good brother. Like he's there trying to help his brother, and so I had to. Well, there was a lot of tweaking. There was a lot of rewriting and shaping and molding when it came to Ronan. So yeah, he was kind of stubborn. I had to really work on him.
Well, one of the cutest characters, I think, besides the goat was Poppy, little baby Poppy. And I'm just so curious, did either of your daughters inspire the character of Poppy?
Yes, yeah. When I first started writing Meant to Be, Violet, which is my older daughter, Violet was about the same age that Poppy was or is in the book. So a lot of Poppy's interactions were based off of Violet. So they say, write what you know. And I was like, well, I want a romance, but I'm a mom and I know how to write the toddler or the older baby / young toddler because that's what I had. So that's kind of why Cordy was a single mom because I wanted to write like a little kid, but I also wanted, a romance, which I don't know, maybe I could have done like a marriage romance, like a couple falling back in love with each other, but maybe a different book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved Poppy's character. I thought she was a perfect, just a perfect character to kind of, I don't know, bring out the characterization in Ronan and Cordy as well.
Yeah.
She was a great conduit of that. And also, so
Yeah. She was
yeah,
a lot of fun to write.
that's, yeah, I find writing from a little kid's perspective is just so, it's just so different because as you become an adult, it's just like, you're like, oh yeah, I remember I used to think like that. And you're almost just revisiting your childhood again, which is
Yeah.
kind of fun. So that's so neat. Um, what has been the most rewarding part of self-publishing, particularly Meant to Be?
I like looked over these questions before and I got to that one and I was like, oh, I don't know. I had to think about it. But I really think that one of the more rewarding things of being like an indie author um, has been that I feel like I'm more approachable or accessible to readers, if that makes sense. Like you might be really nervous to send a message to somebody like Francine Rivers. If you could even, I don't think she even has an Instagram, so I don't know how you'd send her a message. But you know what I mean? Like you might be kind of intimidated to send somebody like Francine Rivers a message. But me, I feel like I come across as more on somebody's level. So like if a reader was interested in talking about Meant to Be or had a question, like they could message me. And I've had people like reach out to me and like talk to me before or even just connect because of that book. And I think that's been really, really cool to create and form relationships over a book that like, I mean, I wasn't sure, how it would go. I mean, I guess you're never really sure when you publish a book how it's going to go. Obviously, you hope it goes well, but you're never really sure. So that was really cool. Just getting to know people over something that I really enjoy doing. Yeah.
That must be really neat. Yeah, I mentioned at the beginning that it's been published for almost a year. And so you've had time to hear that feedback and to get those messages and the response. And that's so great that you find that to be a really rewarding part of the process.
Yeah, I think that's really been really enjoyable. Which I am a bit of a people person. So like that's, I don't know, I'm always up for somebody to, like to talk to me or me to talk to them. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the connections we make online, like, I mean, in our author communities, is just so special. And then online too, it's like, wow, I'm talking to you and you live in China or you live in Australia. It's really cool how it just bridges
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Well, what do you hope readers take away from this story in particular?
I really hope that the theme of like forgiveness is really clear and meant to be, but not just like I guess forgiveness is kind of a deep one. And I hope that what comes across and meant to be is that forgiveness is really healing for yourself, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have boundaries. Like healthy boundaries are still a good thing. Um, because that's something that I've even had to learn as an adult, that like forgiveness is really good and biblical and healthy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have boundaries. Like those are still just as important, for yourself and for the relationship that you're having with other people in general, just people in general, I guess. Um, and so I hope that that's something that is pretty clear to take away from Meant to Be. And as well, that you shouldn't stop the the idea that you might have of church from stopping you from going to church or from having a relationship with God. Just because you're worried about something, um, doesn't shouldn't stop you from having a relationship with Him. So that's what I'm hopeful that kind of comes across in Meant to Be.
Yeah, I think you handled that message really well. I was really encouraged when I read it, and I know it's been maybe 6, 7 months, 8 months since I last read it, so I don't remember every detail. But my review says I loved everything, which I did. Um, yeah, and you handled all that really, really well. So
Yeah.
it was great. Um, and we have one more question for you. And this one, feel free to, well, I guess it's in the question, so you can interpret it however you'd like. Are you currently writing anything else?
Yes.
And if so, what is it?
Yeah, so many things, all the things, everything ever. Yeah, so I'm actually taking this year to write. And so I'm not publishing anything this year. I'm just taking like the whole year to write. And that has turned into 3 different projects. So I, the project that I first started on is getting published later next year. So it's kind of on the back burner, even though I started it first. I'm taking a little break from it. That one's going to be I guess adventure fiction. I don't really know how else to classify it. And funny, I said that Ronan was like the hardest character to write because it was first person and he's a guy, and like that was a little bit of a learning curve. But this adventure fiction is actually going to be like one point of view, and it's going to be a guy named Artie, and um, he's like your really average Joe. Um, and so he's going to kind of go on an adventure, I guess. I don't know how else to explain it because I've taken a little break from Artie's book. Um, have y'all ever watched like I Love You, Beth Cooper? Is that
No.
ringing? Okay, well I guess it's similar to that. I Love You, Beth Cooper is about a really nerdy guy who has a crush on a popular girl, and he just kind of just goes on a wild adventure. Like a raccoon steals his clothes, just like wild stuff where you're like, what is even happening? And so Artie's book is kind of similar, rescuing a baby alligator to bring it to a sanctuary because the girl he likes is like, we can't just leave it behind. So Artie's book, taking a little break from it though. We're going to pick that up here soon. I have a young adult it's a Christian retelling of Romeo and Juliet based on a church split. And so that's Hey Jude Carpenter. And Jude's book is going to be coming out in summer of next year. And so I'm working on his book right now. I'm rewriting it. It was actually the first book I ever wrote, like fully to completion. As a kid I wrote, here and there, but it was like I'd get like halfway through a project and I'd lose interest and I'd have a new idea. So this young adult was the first one I wrote all the way through, and I'm going back and rewriting it. And I'm really glad I didn't publish it, honestly, because like rewriting it, I'm like, yeah, no, this story needed these extra things. It needed this rewritten. It needed this character really brought out. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I'm hoping to I keep saying this like the last 3 months. I'm like, maybe I'll have a rough draft done by the end of the month. And then it's like 3 months later and I'm like, and no rough draft. But hopefully, maybe by the end of this month, I'll have a rough draft of Jude's book. And then my last project, which will be coming out in January, is a nonfiction, and it's a pregnancy after loss book. And so it's on the shorter side, and it's just biblical encouragement. I'm hesitant to call it a devotional because it's not really set up in a devotional form. And it's the first nonfiction that I've ever written outside of like, college papers, which I don't really count college papers because, was not really the same thing as like a nonfiction book. So that one's gonna be coming out January 3rd, and it's on the shorter side. And that one, that's been kind of sitting on my heart for a while, and I didn't really want to write it. And I think it was end of April. I was like, you know what, maybe I should just write it. And then like a week and a half later, I was like, and it's done. So that one, I wasn't planning that one. The other two, I was planning on working on them for this whole year. And that pregnancy after loss book just kind of snuck up on me. And so right now I'm actually working on editing it. So I'm rewriting Jude's book, and I had to take a little pause because something that I changed in my rewriting now doesn't make sense with what I'd written the first time. So I'm having to rework something, and I was like, I'm going to give it a few days to just think about, and I'm going to edit the pregnancy after loss book. And then hopefully, I don't know, it's going pretty well. So maybe next week I'll even send it out to a few like early readers, beta readers, just to get some feedback and see that what I'm hoping to bring across. And I think it comes across well, like, but it's such a, that project is really close to my heart. And so while I think it makes sense, I'm also nervous that it's not making sense the way I want it to. So that one I'm excited about, but I'm nervous because that one's such a close subject that's a little scarier to put in somebody's hands rather than like a fiction book. Like if you disagree with a fiction book, I mean, it's fiction, you know. So this one, I'm really hopeful that it comes across in a really encouraging and biblically encouraging way and points everything back to Christ, and, you know, just, so that's my hope for that one. But yeah, so I've got 3 projects working on. One's paused, one's being rewritten, one's in the editing stage. And eventually I'll loop back around to Artie's book and finish it. But yeah.
I'm so excited to hear that you're working on so many different projects that are all so different from each other.
They are.
I just hearing you speak about them and the light that's in your eyes, I'm just encouraged. Every time I see you post something, every time I've read something that you've written, your heart is just on the page so clearly. And
Well,
it's such a treat to talk to you tonight.
Well, that's really encouraging. And yeah, I'm really excited about them. I love them all. And sometimes I worry, I'm like, well, they're not the same, right? So I've got a young adult, and I've got the adventure fiction, and Meant to Be's a rom-com, and then the nonfiction. And I'm like, is it going to give my readers whiplash to go from like bounce back and forth between genres? But I don't know. I guess that's how my brain kind of works. Like I have to, and I love them. I love each one of them like differently. And so I'm like, I got to get them out. Like they've just got to get out. And then I guess I'll figure out what to do next.
I think it's though because so many readers have different genre interests too. So, and plus, like if someone loves your writing, I feel like they're going to be like, oh, I'll read anything by Storm, no matter what it is, you know? Because yeah, I think it's great that your hand is in so many different projects. Like it's just where your heart is. Like that's really, really cool. And the fact that like, well, if you get tired of one, you can go to the next, you know, you'll never be bored. So
yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been so sweet just getting to know you. And I know, you know, Jordan and I, we know you online, but just hearing you talk and just actually being face to face-ish through a screen, it's just really sweet. So thank you so much for joining us tonight and taking the time to answer some questions and for allowing us to get to know more.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on here. Like I love y'all, and every time you guys post things, like I mean, Alyssa, you're one to talk. You've got all these like amazing projects going on, and like that makes me so excited. And Jordan's working you're working on a whole new picture book, and like, I mean, my daughter still like absolutely loves Marzipan's story. Like she'll be like, can we have the bunny book? And I'm like, yeah, honey. So like, I don't know. I just get so excited about all your guys' things too. Like, I don't know. It's really cool.
Thanks, Storm.
Thank you for sending me pictures of your daughter reading my book too. That just touches my heart.
Yes, she is. She's such a reader. We're reading a book on facts right now, actually. It's all animal facts, and it's like actual, like, you know, this is the 3 different types of feathers a bird has or whatever. I'm like, okay. And she asks for it every night. She's like, all right, we're reading 4 pages. I need to know all the bird facts. So
I'm sure you're learning a lot.
yes, I'm learning probably more than she is.
You got a future ornithologist in the
Yeah.
family.
I know. She's absolutely, so she devours books. So we're already excited for your next picture book. And I'm excited for all your projects, Alyssa. Like when Jordan messaged me, I was kind of fangirling a little bit, like, oh my gosh. Like, so thank you for having me on.
Of course, anytime.
This was great. Love you.
Love you too.
Well, we're gonna bid you all adieu who is watching. Thank you for tuning in. And Storm, thank you again. And we'll just call it a night.
Yes. Yes. You
Bye.
guys have a good night. Bye.
Yes, you too.
Bye.
Bye.